All right, everyone. I want to welcome you all for coming to my presentation today. My name is Neil Carter, and I'm going to be presenting a little bit about specializing versus generalizing in information technology careers. First off, I want to make a quick note that if you have any trouble along the way of hearing this presentation, please go ahead and just click the hide video and then the show video button. We've had a few reports that might be a bit of trouble for folks. So jumping right in and getting started, since I only have about an hour to talk to all of you. The first thing that I want to do is just real quick agenda. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to tell you a little bit about who I am, tell you a little bit about my career, what I've done, probably give you some anecdotes from some of my colleagues and peers throughout my career and what they've done. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it is to be a generalist and what it is to be a specialist. What are the pros and cons of each? I think it's important to recognize that you can do both and be very successful. And hopefully you'll come away from this conversation with a little more knowledge about what your opportunities are in information technology careers. I'm going to talk a little bit about what kinds of jobs are out there, real high level, but I look forward to answering any questions that you might have along the way. I'm going to give you a few tips for figuring out what's right for you in terms of should you go be a specialist, should you go be a generalist, and what's going to be some ways that you can, some questions you can ask yourself and some experiences that you can go and have that will help direct you one way or another. Finally, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about when you do figure out what you want to do, whether it's specialize or generalize, or if you don't know, what do you do then? And then I'll open it up and take your questions. Feel free to type your questions in along the way, and I'll address them towards the end. Hopefully, like I said, you'll find this all very useful. So getting right down to it. Who am I? Where am I from? Etc. So I grew up here in the Seattle area with companies like Boeing and Adobe and Microsoft right in my backyard. So ever since I was a teenager, being involved in technology, because it's so prolific here in the Pacific Northwest, here in Seattle, has been something that I've been hugely passionate about. And I can remember when I was in high school, we took a field trip to the Microsoft campus and had the opportunity to go through and meet some of the employees that worked here and have an opportunity to see some of the technologies they were working on, what the environment was like, etc. And I was hooked right away. That was it for me. Or perhaps I suppose it could have been that they had a giant Tetris machine and I was just a big fan of video games, still am. But thinking through a little bit about my career and my education, because I know many of you are going to be students that are involved in STEM tracks at your colleges or have a deep interest in STEM, even if you may not be studying that in school today. I took a very twisty path, and I'll be very honest about that. My high school fortunately had a really in-depth computer training program. So coming out of high school, when I graduated, and I'll date myself, I graduated in 1999, I walked out of there with skills to become a web developer right out of the gates. I was fully proficient in HTML and JavaScript. I had some proficiencies in some object-oriented languages and had done a lot of TA work with the school IT administrator, so I was familiar with some general hardware support and printer support and network support. Right out of high school, I got a job working as a junior developer, just coding up HTML and JavaScript for an e-learning company called Click to Learn, and I was with that company for about 2.5 years. That company was very specialized. So while I worked at that company, I had an opportunity to really stretch my legs as a developer and get an opportunity to advance into a specific platform called Vignette. And I believe that company is around today. I don't believe that same platform is around because it's quite archaic at this point. But at the time, it was very leading edge, and it was a worldwide company. The interesting thing about that was it had its own very specific programming language that was used, and it was very highly specialized for what we were trying to do in delivering electronic learning environments. And this was back in the years 2000 through 2002 and a half that I was there. And when you think back to what the internet was like back then, it was a very, very different space than it is today. So what was interesting about that was I worked at this company for about two and a half years, had an opportunity to grow as a developer, had an opportunity to play with a lot of different technologies, but then really go very, very deep in one technology. After that, I transitioned into another role working for a local coffee company, which I think a lot of you will probably find very funny. It wasn't Starbucks. It was a small company that was out of a guy's house, and there were 5 employees, and it was a very close-knit, tight environment where I got to be the customer service and support manager for the entire nation. What they did was they imported coffee machines, and I got to do all of the technical support and service and everything for those, which was great because it allowed me to get more experience in a direct service business, which I think is important for anybody when they think about getting into a career. Being able to have excellent customer service skills is something that will always serve you well. From there, I went back into technology and worked for a company that is owned by, or was started by Paul Allen, one of the co-founders of Microsoft. It's called Digio at the time, and that company was in cable technologies. So similar to how when you go to Charter or Adelphia or Comcast, Time Warner, any of these cable companies, and you ask them to send you a HD digital video recording device so that you can record your shows, play them back later, this company makes one as well. And I got to work in their network operations center as a technician and do tier 3 support, which means generally when a customer has an issue, they call in, they talk directly to the cable company. When that cable company can't figure out the problem or they're having an issue with the service, they call the manufacturer, and I would be that tier 3 support individual who was helping them out. Speeding along through things, I dabbled a little bit in the banking system, and I was in the infrastructure project management office for what was Washington Mutual at the time. That was before they were bought out. And finally, after that, I landed my first gig at Microsoft. And I've been at Microsoft now for about 7 years. Now, in all of that, when did I finally go back to school? When did I go to college? Well, I did finally go back to school and college when I went to the University of Washington. One of the things that I always struggled with was I wanted to find what I was good at first, what really I was passionate about before I went to school, and I wanted to get a degree that would help me along the way. So finally, about 5 years ago now, I went to my manager at Microsoft at the time, and I said, hey, you know, I've done some college, I'm nearly complete with an associate's degree, but I'm not sure that the track I was on is what I wanted to do. At the time, I was going to be an English major. Then I went to him and I said, you know, I really am digging this whole technology and business sort of alignment and how they play together, and I would love to go back and study marketing. They were fully supportive, and I was able to go back and complete my education, and I graduated at the ripe young age of 31 years old from the University of Washington Foster School of Business, which is my alma mater and is just down the street from where Microsoft is. It's a fabulous school, and I had an incredible, absolutely incredible time. So, as you can kind of see throughout my story, my history and my twisty path, and as I went through things, I really started off as much more of a specialist, really, one environment, one platform, really focused in online development using very specific tools. And throughout my career, I started to expand my skill set and go into other areas, being in cable technologies and deployment, and being in banking, and then finally being in Microsoft, and having the opportunity within Microsoft to do a few different roles. Here at Microsoft today, I'm called a technical evangelist. That's my title. What I do here is I run a global program called Students to Business. And this is a program that helps students who are in high school and college who are interested in careers in technology and want to be involved in a company that focuses on Microsoft technologies. And we connect them with internships and jobs at one of our partners or customers. And what that means is Microsoft has a partner network of over 500,000 companies worldwide. So we have a ton of partners, of our corporate partners, who come to us and say, hey, I've invested in your technologies, we love your technologies, I've got all these job openings for people to fill roles that are utilizing those technologies. So how do I find them? I'm having trouble sourcing the right kind of talent. Students to Business is one of the ways that we help them out by finding folks that are interested in their first career out of college or an internship, help find them get a job at one of these companies. So I recommend you go to that site. I'll show you a link later on at the end of this presentation of where you can go. So let's talk a little bit about what it is. When you think of a generalist, right, you think of somebody who is maybe an inch deep and a mile wide, or, as I showcase here, you're thinking of somebody who kind of has a tool belt full of tools, but can kind of find the right tool that sort of fixes the problem, but isn't a specialized tool, right? You're not seeing an impact wrench here. You're seeing someone who is going to be very generalized, right? Someone who can kind of do a little bit of everything. But when you think through what a specialist is, this is somebody who is trained to do a very, very specific thing, or a subset of specific things, and is very niche. So really think through these in those terms, and as we go through this, we'll talk about them broadly, we'll talk about them more specifically, but the thing I want to stress is we're seeing a trend oftentimes in technology careers where individuals are asked, to either be a deeply, deeply technical individual who focuses on in one area and is an expert. And there's a great career path for you doing that. You can absolutely have a fully fledged, wonderful career being a specialist, doing one thing extremely well and being an expert. But you can also, and I hope that as you go away from this presentation at the end of it, you can also have the opportunity to have a similarly successful career that is just as engaging, just as rewarding by doing a lot of different things, which is more of the generalist path. And there are roles on both sides, and there's a lot of roles on both sides. It's just choosing the right one for you. The one thing that I would stress is don't ever go into this thinking that the one that you pick first is the one you'll stick with for forever, because you're going to evolve as an employee. You're going to figure out as you go through your career that things change, and you find new things sort of tickle your brain or get you excited or get you passionate. And I always stress that you should always be open to new experiences. So let's talk about what is a specialist, right? So let's talk about some of the pros of being a specialist. Now, the first thing is, and I'm going to speak about these in very broad terms, so very 80% kind of scenarios. So just to kind of paint it with a broad stroke. But really one of the pros of being a specialist right out the gates is typically you make more money, right? Typically if you're a very highly specialized individual, when you have skills to offer to a company, you can usually charge a premium for them because your skills are very hard to come by. So resource scarcity, just typical economics, resource scarcity equals higher income or higher earning potential. Oftentimes I see people who are specialists who, and this is something that's very specific to people who are specialists that really know what they want to do. Like they went into that specialty because that just, whatever it was, it sparked incredible interest for them. Those individuals tend to be really, really happy with their jobs. They tend to love what they do. They get really passionate about what they do. They're passionate about the technology. They're passionate about the environment, and so they typically have a higher satisfaction. So something to keep in mind as well. One of the other pros to this is it is a niche role, as I described. But the thing to keep in mind about it is when you're working through a project and you have somebody who is like that particular piece of the puzzle, and they have to get something, they have to be the one to get something done, other than the only one to get something done. They end up being sort of this critical path point of success. And there's a lot of value that comes out of that. So intrinsic value from taking pride in your work and knowing that what you're providing as a service or what you're doing is actually going to be something that you can look back on at the end of a delivery of a project or a program or a service or whatever it is and say, that piece right there, that's what I worked on. And sometimes that's harder to do if you're in more of a generalist role or you're in more other types of roles that lean towards the generalist side. So I consider that a pro, that when you really can take a look at, we delivered X product, Acme Corp product, and I was able to point to, I developed that thing right there. And that's a really cool experience. One of the things that I think is really important when we think about motivating employees is one of the 3 key points of motivation is mastery. And being a specialist, being someone who's that niche role individual, you are clearly an expert in your area, and everybody recognizes it. and they regard you that way, and you get that intrinsic feeling of, hey, I really am the expert. People come to me when they have a question about this specific thing, they're going to come and ask me about it. And that's a pro, I think. I think a lot of people who like the idea of feeling as though they've mastered something, they want to be able to share that with other individuals, they want to be consulted on things. It's a great feeling. And finally, one of the things about a specialist, and this is interesting because I think it actually goes both sides of the fence, so I'll talk about it in both, is you can consult, right? So being a specialist means that having those high demand skills, being able to be recognized as an expert. If you ever wanted to be someone who was more of a consultant, who consulted a particular industry and the companies in that industry, you can go through and you can really consult through all of them. And people will come to you. If you can make a name for yourself, if you can establish yourself, they'll really come to you to seek out help for whatever that particular niche problem is they're trying to solve that you have the answers for. That said, there are also some cons associated to being a specialist. And one of the things that I want to stress here is finding jobs can sometimes be harder because they're so rare. So that when you have a small niche set of jobs or occupations within that realm, competition can be fierce. It can be harder to find those jobs. Maybe you can work yourself out of a job by being a specialist because you go through and you solve problems or you advance people to a new technology that you might be aware of or something. So it can be kind of difficult sometimes to stay steadily employed. But that is one of the things that you take as being a part of a specialist is, again, this is a painting in broad strokes because there are plenty of specialists who get engaged in companies that are big, like Microsoft. We have a lot of people who are very, very, very specialized here at Microsoft. But in general, a specialist, I would say, can typically have a harder time finding roles because it's very specific to a specific skill set, and competition within that can be very, very fierce. The other thing the other piece that sort of can be a struggle when you're a specialist is depending on your specialty, there can be fewer opportunities for you to grow. So if being a lifelong learner, if continuing to grow beyond your particular niche role or that industry, say you choose a specific industry like aerospace or defense or something of that nature, say you eventually want to grow out of that, if you're very, very highly specialized in a technology that is unique to that particular industry, it's going to be a really difficult effort to actually grow into something else. So it's always something to be aware of that you need to take into account when you consider what kind of career do I want to have going forward. The other piece to this is keeping up with technological change within that particular industry or particular environment or niche small set of careers can be very challenging. As technology moves, as all of you know, technology moves at such a rapid pace right now that one of the statistics that we hear about even here at Microsoft is a freshman goes into college, learns how to do a certain number of skills in their computer science career track, right? By the time they graduate, after 4 years or 5 years, the skills they learned in their first year and a half typically are those languages or those particular technological solutions or whatever are not usually still in practice anymore. They may be obsolete. So you got to really think about, do I want to be on the bleeding edge, and do I have just this drive and passion for technology? And that's going to help lead you through, being I think a very productive specialist as you look to the future. And finally, one of the other things that I like to point out is when you think about the big stars in a company, you think about leadership roles, right? There are some individuals, like here at Microsoft, we have individuals who are highly recognized specialists. We call them a technical fellow, and that's their title. They're a technical fellow, but there are only a few in the entire company. With 90,000 employees here at Microsoft, I believe there's only a few dozen of these individuals. So the leadership roles and the ability to lead a team, if that's something that you're interested, or the ability to really grow into a highly regarded expert, very well known, can be very hard to do if you're a specialist. Sometimes you end up playing in a sort of the background role, and you're considered the expert, but you're not somebody who's going to be front and center all the time or at the higher echelons of management. So let's juxtapose that and let's take a look at what is it like to be a generalist. When we think about a generalist, there are a number of pros, and it's funny because oftentimes they're very different from what, they're the exact opposite of the cons you see in a specialist role. So one of the pros is being a generalist is sometimes it's easier to find a job, right? So there's going to be more opportunity for individuals who have what we call a mile wide and an inch deep. So they're individuals who can go out and they can kind of be plugged into whatever industry it is. They can go through and bring value to many different aspects of an organization. And they're people that you can kind of you can mold and cookie cutter fit into where you need them to go inside of an organization. So finding a job can actually sometimes be a little bit easier as a generalist. You as a generalist potentially get to impact a wider swath of the business. So one of the things about being a generalist and not being a technological expert. So, and that's not to say that there aren't generalists who are experts in a given area, but in broader terms, because of the nature of the role of an IT generalist, you have to consider that what you're doing is you're executing work in a collaborative environment, and oftentimes through other people, so you're influencing other people. And so you get to impact a wider swath of the business at hand. And a lot of people find that interesting. They like to be able to say, hey, I'm an IT technology program manager, and I get to work with the development folks, the test folks, I get to work with the folks in marketing, the folks in product management, et cetera, deployment, delivery, sales, et cetera. And you get to influence all of them. And some people look at that and they go, wow, that's really cool. I get to be a part of a network of individuals who are delivering something. Personally, for me, that's what I've transitioned into, and I find a lot of enjoyment out of that. But if you had heard earlier, we had another gentleman from Microsoft speaking. His name's Dion Hutchings, and he's also a technical evangelist, but he is very, very specific. He's very much a specialist, and he loves what he does. And he gets to do some really cool stuff. So it's interesting because we work on a similar team, but we're very different roles in terms of being generalist or specialist. So. Some of the other things that are going to be pros, like I said, it's easier to translate from one industry to the next, so it's easier to find those jobs. It's easier to take what you learn from this sector and then translate those skills that make sense and then move them into the next industry and get a chance to bring learnings from one to the next to the next, and that can actually be a really rewarding experience. You can also be more of a high-level consultant. The nice thing about being a specialist is you're really down in the nuts and bolts, and you're really doing like the rubber meets the road stuff, and you're really very specific. But being a generalist, you can go to a different kind of consulting. You can go into organizational consulting, technology consulting at a much higher level. You can do direct consulting of business decision makers at a higher level in an organization. So there's consulting opportunities there for you as well, and they're just slightly different. And finally, IT generalists, I think they typically have a good path to upper management, to being in a leadership position, because they tend to be people who have not only experienced many different technologies, they may not be an expert in any of them, but they have an understanding roughly of where all of those fit into play. They're really good at doing organization-wide efforts, they're really good at collaboration, and those are oftentimes skills that big companies are looking for in senior leadership. So something to consider as you think about your career. Some of the cons, though, with being a journalist, I would say that if you're an individual who has a lot of intrinsic pride about doing, right? You like to do work, you like to see it when it's done, you like to point to something and say, hey, I did that. I was responsible for that, and I did it alone, or with a small team. And we were like that SWAT team that came in and got it done and figured it out and launched it out, or whatever that might be, then probably being a generalist is not the right thing for you, because typically you're going to be working through influence, as I've said. You don't oftentimes get the opportunity to go after those toughest technological problems. You may oftentimes be a part of it. You may be someone who coordinates an effort, but actually solving problems may not be something that you get to do as an IT generalist in a much broader term. You also have to stay aware of many different technologies. And this is one of those areas where it can be a rabbit hole. So you start to dig into a technology and you want to go deep enough that you can kind of understand how it works, but you don't want to go so deep that now you've utilized so much of your time in one technology that you're missing out on many others that play in the same space. Because you want to be able to say, okay, I understand, like for me specifically, in my role here at Microsoft, I get to do some consulting work for my team in terms of web technologies. But I'm no longer up to date on the latest web technologies in terms of all of the deep coding aspect of it. Like if you asked me to code up something in HTML5 and Ajax and all of that, I probably couldn't do that today. It would take me a while to relearn the latest technologies to do that. But do I understand what those technologies do? Absolutely. You know, I absolutely understand how HTML5 works in terms of the presentation layer on a web page and what it does in the back end. I understand what Ajax does and how it can be leveraged to make more compelling experiences online. I understand those things. It's the right level, so you got to find that perfect balance. So if really getting engaged deeply inside of a technology is important to you, maybe being a generalist is not the right career path for you. Your career as a generalist. Now, one thing I want to stress is in all of the people that I get to interview here at Microsoft and all the people that I meet, one of the most underplayed set of skills that people don't spend a lot of time developing, but I think that they should be developing, is their soft skills. And what do I mean by that, right? So we consider, you know, in industry, we consider your hard skills, your skills like I'm able to be a .NET programmer. I can program on a LAMP stack. I am a web developer, and I have all of the languages and proficiencies for everything that, you know, that exists within that, right? But when it actually comes to your soft skills, these are things like your ability to collaborate effectively on a team, your ability to network with your peers to help solve issues. So one of the things that's the most important trait that I could ever impart to any new worker is make sure you network like crazy. Find out what other people do. Ask them. People love to talk about what they do at work. You talk about what their areas of responsibility are. Talk about what their interests are, and catalog that information. Write it down if you need to, or just make sure you have it stored up there in your brain. And when it comes time where you have an issue that you need to solve, you know, you need to make sure that you go back and you talk to your network. So all of these soft skills, ability to negotiate, the ability to do a little bit of sales, right? Those are all things that are really important for a generalist and not necessarily as important for a specialist. So if that side of technology is something that you're interested in, the idea of not only just being a keyboard cowboy, but also being somebody who goes out and, you know, you can be the interface between the deep technical developers and the completely non-technical business individuals, that's a perfect place for a generalist, right? They can come in, they can talk a little bit of the language, they can understand a little bit of the technology and the problems that the folks down at the dev level are having and test level are having, but then they can also translate it up in a concise way to that upper management to help make the right decisions for businesses going forward. So you have to really think through what are these things that are important to you in terms of how you want to develop your career. And finally, the one note on this last slide here is typically as a generalist, when you tend to work in teams, you tend to sort of be this facilitator, this collaborator, you know, etc. You don't end up being in the spotlight very often. You're not oftentimes in the limelight. Usually it's the team effort that came through that they highlight in terms of inter-office emails, congratulating people on launches of a product or a service or a program or whatever. It tends to be the team did this amazing job or the team did this and that. You might get a little call out in the bottom of the email, but ultimately it's more about the team effort and what you achieved holistically versus being a specialist where oftentimes if it's like a very specific hard technical challenge, like we can't figure out how to make this video card work with this motherboard and it required machine recoding to get it done, well, you know, that's something that a specialist can come in and they can fix that, and then they get just, you know, tons of kudos about they did this one thing and the spotlight's going to be directly on them. So another thing to think about is you think through what kind of individual am I and what career do I want to have. So what types of roles exist out there? Now this is one of those things that, you know, I could have listed probably 1,000 different job titles here, but I wanted to have a few just to kind of give you an idea on a spectrum. Specialist to generalist, what does that look like? So I'll start from the general side and work back. You know, so you start to really think through, like from a technical business manager's perspective, you're somebody who sits more at a higher level. You might be a manager of an entire business unit. You might be somebody who works and has a team of individuals underneath you, and you might manage a technological service or product or what have you, program, application, any of those things. You tend to be more at the I would say 30,000 foot level. You think through strategy, you're looking at long-term vision, but at the same time, you're taking technology into account. So you might have someone who is a consultant who you speak to give you ideas of where's technology going in your particular industry or region for the future. Again, that's a specialist job, right? But the technical business manager is somebody who's going to be thinking more through, how do I utilize the technology that we have today? What investments do I need to make in that technology to be competitive in the future, et cetera, et cetera. So you can kind of see how a technical business manager is much more, 30,000 foot level, much more, of the true, mile wide in terms of their skill set and only an inch deep. Then you kind of move down the spectrum to a business analyst, and this is usually somebody whose career path is to become a technical business manager. Their lower level probably reports to a technical business manager, and they're somebody who's really doing a lot of that work in terms of going through and analyzing the technology that you have today, analyzing where you're going and making recommendations. So they'll oftentimes be interfacing with those specialists, but are individuals that will still be more on the businessy side. You get down kind of one step further. You get down into your technical project managers, a little bit more technical, somebody who maybe has to do a little bit of coding themselves. We have quite a few of those here at Microsoft who not only run like a particular feature for a program, like an Office program or Visual Studio, but they also have to get in and do some of the coding themselves. You'll have a test engineer who, again, is doing the marrying of the, how is dev kind of kicking out the code, and how is it, rendering on a screen, and does that match what the design team has put forth and the product development team has put forth as the specifications. And so you kind of sit right in the middle between the two, I think. Going down, you get into software engineers, and this is more of a broad software engineer. This is somebody who's a general engineer. Maybe they focus in one particular set of technologies, like the Microsoft stack of technologies, or they might be an iOS developer or something like that, right? So you start to get, a little bit more specific, but they're typically people who are at a broader skill set in terms of software engineering. And you get down to database administrators. Now these people are, they focus in one particular type of software and technology and hardware and the interface there, and now you're starting to get a little bit more specific, and you can even get down to, and as I put here, just to throw one out there, was a cloud services developer. Now that's a really specific kind of career, right? You are somebody who focuses on, how do I have data in the cloud? How do I manage that data? How do I serve it up? How do I, all of that, right? How do I post and pull and all of the data in terms of the cloud services? And that's really a specialist role. Just like if you were saying that you wanted to be an iOS developer, but you wanted to focus in phone application, right? Or the marriage between television and phone or device or something like that. Now you're talking about really, really, really specific, very niche roles. And those are very much a specialist mentality. So, oftentimes I hear about this, and I love to put this slide up, but I often hear like, okay, so great, there's all these different, kinds of roles that exist today. But maybe one of the things that's going to influence me is, what's my earnings potential? So what I've done is I've gone up just recently, and I've gone to the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the United States government and pulled down from the nationwide standpoint where your median income is. Now this is the average across the entire US, but as you can see, people who exist inside computer careers, even at the lower level, even people who are more entry-level individuals doing help desk specialists, etc., there's really good money to be made in this career. And you think through, here you have, like a computer research scientist making well over $100,000 a year. Now that is an amazing income for anybody. And these are median incomes, so depending on where you're at, it's going to be up or down or just right around there. But really consider that, choosing a career in STEM, choosing a career in technology is really going to be something that you're going to find will be very lucrative for you in the future. When we think through, one thing I would encourage you to think through is, as you look at careers, as you think about your careers in the future, also think about, what's my long-term prospect for that career? If I make a bet to learn everything I can, go through school, get my degree, go and do internships, go out, and actually get a job, am I still going to have a job in that career 10, 20 years from now? So what I've also done here is, again, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I've looked at their employment projections. Now, one of the great things to think about here is I've highlighted in green the top 5. right? The top 5 growth projections. Now, what's interesting is, as probably a lot of you have heard through some of your classes or through the news, certainly there are aspects of the healthcare industry that are going to be huge because the baby boomer generation is going to be retiring. But that also does one other thing, right? So today we have a lot of individuals who are engaged in technology careers who are a part of that baby boomer generation. And what that means is when they leave that career, there's going to be a lot of positions that are going to be open. So you're seeing there's a number of other areas where we see a big demand for jobs in the future. And one of those, tied for 4th place, is STEM careers. They are expecting between 2010 and 2020 a over 22% growth in that career, which is enormous. That's enormous. So I really encourage you, when you think through this, think through, okay, if I go into one particular area, is that going to be an area I'm still employed? I personally would not recommend going into farming or fishing unless you were very specialized in something, or you had some competitive advantage. As you can see, they're anticipating that that's actually going to decline by 2% over the next 10 years. So until 2020, I should say. So, really think through where the job's going to be and where am I going to be able to stay employed, continue to earn that good income, etc. So thinking, the next step in thinking through this is really, okay, so Neil, you've thrown a ton of information at me, and that's all great. But let's also consider, maybe I don't really know. Maybe I haven't given it enough thought yet. I don't really know what it is I want to do. So here are some questions you can ask yourself that will help you determine what's the right opportunity for you, right? Do you know exactly what you want to do with your career? Are you an individual who says, yes, I have a technology that I specialize in, I like that technology, I don't really want to use any other technology, I want to focus on that tech? Great, right? Perfect. That is one big indicating piece of information for you to think about. Or do you say, no, I don't really have one technology I love, and I kind of want to dabble in a lot of different things? Great, that's another thing to think about, right? One of the things I like to point out is, are you somebody who inherently you like to work on teams? You get a lot of value out of being in a collaborative effort. You're somebody who you like to influence other people. You like to influence the work that's being done. You like to see into other areas of an organization. That's going to be more of a generalist kind of work. Or are you somebody who what I get, the thing I value the most is at the end of the day, I wrote 1,000 lines of code. Not that that's necessarily feasible unless you worked like an 18-hour day and you were a total rock star, but, and that's not to say that many of you probably aren't. I'm sure many people are extremely solid and are able to do that, but really think through, at the end of the day, what do you find value in? Do you go home at night and do you say, you know what, I got to work on a team of individuals, we came up with a killer idea, and we're going to work together to bring that to fruition, and it's going to be, I get to be this coordinator that helps sort of shepherd that through to completion? That is a generalist. Or are you someone's like, okay, maybe I was on that team, but you know what I get to do? I get to be the guy that does the server-side programming to make that happen, and then, from that point, maybe I get to expand into doing more cloud service development to grow this in year 3 out to, global audience, etc. Well, now you're talking more about a generalist. So really think through where you get your intrinsic value out of when it comes to work, because that's a really important thing to consider as you look at your career options. Consider your career goals. Do you have visions of being in management? Are you wanting to lead whole organizations of individuals? Now, that's not to say that there aren't highly technical individuals who get to do that. There are chief technology officers at companies. There's a chief technology officer here, absolutely. And they are highly technical individuals. Would I say that they are as technical as maybe some of the frontline specialists that we have? Maybe, maybe not, probably not, but something to consider. Is executive management something that you want to go into? Because having skills in IT will never serve you wrong as you go into other aspects of the business. If you want to go into technical sales and grow through that career into being a VP of sales, right? Now you're a VP of sales who has a strong basis in technology, and that's a pretty powerful thing, right? The ability to understand technology and talk the talk. Are you somebody who wants to go into being a CEO, a COO, those things? Technology will never serve you wrong in all of those careers. But you have to really consider, what is the career path you want to take and start leading towards that. Or, on the other hand, as I point out here, do you want to be an architect? Are you somebody who wants to sit down and lead from not even really a management standpoint, but more of a thought leadership, a technical leadership? Do you want to sit back and do you want to be the one to create the blueprint for how something comes together, right? I think of architects for software in a very similar way that I think about architects for building a house, right? They're the individuals who sit back and go, you know what, if we're going to build this product, right, my experience and my expertise says that to build it, we need to have not only just four walls, that's the basic stuff, everybody gets that, but we need to have this joist and it needs to have this, kind of connection between the two to structure, to hold the structure, and we need to have this sort of thoroughfare way that's going to be this wide and this tall to allow traffic through the center of the home or whatever. So you have to really think about that, and that's more of a real deep technical specialist. Very few people do that and do it really, really well, but the people who do are hugely valued. Over the course of your career, are you somebody who really wants to play in many different industries? Are you somebody who you want to go out, you want to take a sample from all these different industries? Great, generalist all the way, right? Or are you somebody who says, you know what, no, for me, I want to be in defense, right? I want to develop the tracking systems, or I want to develop a radar system, or whatever, right? And there are many different kinds of ways you can do that. In fact, I have a friend who, she works at Boeing. She's in the defense team. She develops the chemical protection systems for the pilots and airplanes. How cool is that, right? But that's a highly specialized engineering kind of role, right? So really think through what that is and what you want to do. Or do you want to be an individual who, you want to be able to work across a bunch of different stuff? That's for you to figure out. That's a question you have to ask yourself as you think through your career. One of the things that's important is, do you have an incredible amount of passion about the latest technology? Is staying on top of that technology the thing that is most important to you? Like, it's your bread and butter. You wake up, you eat, you sleep, you drink, you dream about just technology and staying on top of it because it really drives you, right? That is really a specialist, because what you're allowing yourself to do then is identify niche markets and jump from one to the next, right? Also, how important is it for you to be recognized as the expert, for you to be that standout individual, the person the limelight gets shown on when something goes really well or something gets solved, right? Again, this isn't to say that generalists don't get that. Typically, it's not something that you see all the time. You still get to be that person from time to time who does something really big and really bold, and you get to be the person who everybody goes to and says, hey, you did a great job, pat on the back, attaboy, right? But you're going to see that kind of activity happen where you're a really recognized expert more when you're a specialist in a particular area or particular industry. So something to keep in mind. You should ask yourself these questions, and that'll help you determine what you should do for your career. So, all right. I'm confused, I'm lost, I'm unsure, I'm perplexed, I have no idea what it is I want to do. All this information has been great. God, I just don't even know where to get started. I'm just completely lost. Not a problem. That is actually okay. It's okay to be lost right now, because you're just going to be launching into your career, and it's okay to really think through these questions and maybe go, I don't know. I'm not sure if I want to be this or that. That's absolutely okay. Here's some things you can do, right? First off is, I always recommend people explore. Explore. Go out. Use your network that you have today. Talk to your professors, talk to your parents, talk to your parents' friends, talk to anybody you know in an industry, right? Heck, reach out to somebody who is on LinkedIn in the company that you might be interested in, that's in an industry you might be interested in. If you go on LinkedIn, you want to find somebody in Boeing who does something really unique and cool, ping them. Why not? You have nothing to lose. And more often than not, you'll find that people will actually be willing to talk to you about it. Ask them questions. How did they get there? What did they do? What was their education like? What would they recommend to somebody else wanting to get into that industry? And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this stuff before, but I really can't stress enough how important it is to go out, do things like internships, do things like job shadowing, reach out to these individuals. I promise you, professionals love nothing more than to talk about their career. It really is. It's really true. Point number 2, test it out, right? So if you think you want to go one direction or another, take some courses at your school. Go down that path. Do extracurricular work. And I'm going to show you guys later some other things that you can go do in terms of what Microsoft offers. Our DreamSpark program, our Imagine Cup, big technology competitions. There's plenty of resources that exist out there for you so that you can go sample what it's like before you go into the workforce, right? While you're still a student. Go try to develop a mobile application. If you love it, great, go for it. If you hate it, Well, now you know that's information that you can take when you look forward to what's your next step in identifying the career that's right for you. Number 3 is when you think through your first career, the thing that I always say is it is so important to make sure that you go into your first career with eyes wide open. Understand that it's going to be difficult, it's going to be a huge change from your college life, but it can be so rewarding and so much fun. The thing that I really want to stress to everybody when it's moving into that first career is really ask the questions of the company. What can you do for me for growth? How can you make sure that maybe you want to bring me in and I want to be this generalized software engineer for now, but I also want to have the opportunity to go in and do some specialized work too, because I want that experience and I want to figure out what's right for me. Great. Ask those questions. Get engaged with the hiring manager. Get engaged with the company. Take the training. Do the extracurricular work outside of your office hours to figure out, how can you evolve as an employee, and push them to put you in different kinds of projects. They love that initiative. Managers love that initiative. Show up, do great work, show interest in the future of the company, and talk to them about how you can contribute in a bigger way in very different aspects of the company. And you can move around. There's no problem with moving around through a company. And that's actually one of the things that I love most about Microsoft. With such a large organization, I have worked in 4 different technology groups, and I absolutely love it. I've got an opportunity to experience each one, and I've had different roles in different ones, right? But you got to have that conversation with your manager, and you got to be open about it. You got to really be willing to put the old college try and put the elbow grease in to make sure that you are executing well in whatever role you're given before you jump onto the next one. And if something doesn't work out, be open. Talk to your manager about it. Hey, you know what? I really thought that this was the right thing for me, but ultimately, maybe not, right? Maybe I want to go back to being a general source specialist or whatever it was, or maybe I want to try something completely different. That's absolutely up to you, but always make sure that you're pushing the company to give you a little back. You're investing in them. They should invest back in you. So this is one that a lot of people always get surprised about when I say this, but when in doubt, consult. If you don't really know, there's plenty of consulting firms out there for technology that would love to snatch up young, fresh talent who want to experience a lot of different industries. And one of the nice things about it, if you can choose the right kind of consulting firm, you can go out there and you can work on short-term projects that last 3 to 6 months, but they might be many different industries. So you get the opportunity to do a little bit something different in each iteration. And that can be a great way for you in a short period of time to build up a resume of interesting different kinds of projects that you've done, and really get an opportunity to sample very different industries. At the same time, it also gives you the opportunity to really build out a robust network. When you're out there working with clients, you're out there interfacing with people in the consulting realm. This is a great opportunity for you, and I really can't recommend it highly enough. If you're still unsure after all of this, why not? Why not? Do it, work hard, experience a lot of different industries, pick one that really tickles you, and go after it. And finally, the thing that you have to realize is you can do anything, right? Whatever it is, become a lifelong learner. So the world is your oyster. I always tell people this, but it's so, so true. Trust in yourself. If you go into an industry and you hate it, that's not doing anybody any good. It's not doing yourself any good. It's not doing the company you work for any good. Go find what you're passionate about, right? Do something that it matters to you intrinsically. So always make sure that you're willing to roll with it and you're changing with the times. Don't get stagnant. Be a lifelong learner. Find out about the newest stuff that's happening. Explore different opportunities, but always trust that you're going to be able to make it through with the skills that you have and your ability to continue to grow and evolve as an adult, as a worker, as a person. So I always try to make sure that people recognize that, look at your pedigree, you're going through college, you're getting this degree, you're investing in yourself. STEM is really, really hard. And you got, I give huge kudos to people who go through that career path. You got a lot of opportunity ahead of you. So with that, I'm going to answer some of the questions that you've asked. I'll read them out loud and then kind of give my thoughts back. So let's see here. So Catherine, you asked, does Microsoft have any jobs that are involved with the sciences, not like computery? It's a great question. So in terms of sciences, are you talking about things like health sciences? In terms of what? So I'll kind of broadly answer that. Microsoft has a lot of different technology that we play in. So we have a whole area of our business that is very research oriented. And if you consider interactive design, that can be non-computery, but very scientific in the approach of developing the next kind of user interface. Right, so there's one option there. In terms of hardware products, this mouse, right? This mouse was something that was developed here at Microsoft, right? So it has a very particular form and function, a very unique, design characteristic to it, and it's not necessarily very computery to be able to develop something that's going to be useful, right? We also have a whole product suite called the Microsoft Health Vault, which is more about healthcare and how you create better records and a better experience for people in the health industry and their patients. So there's a whole area there that gets involved in health sciences and tracking of that maybe is not super computery. Really, we play in a lot of different realms within this company. We have things that are in automotive, right? We have our Sync product that is embedded within many of Ford's cars, right? So there's a lot of things that are scientific in nature, that are research in nature, that you can come into Microsoft and have a really rewarding career that may not be super stoked or super embedded in terms of you have to be a computer genius, right? So consider those as well. And then, like anything else, in terms of sciences, there's all sorts of jobs in our engagements with our governments. So doing a lot of policy decision making, et cetera, our citizenship, that's what we call it in the industry. Are we being good citizens of our country, of the world at large? Are we doing a good job of minimizing our carbon footprint and all of that? There are definitely opportunities like that within any big company, and certainly here at Microsoft, certainly huge teams of people who do that. So I hope I answered your question. You also asked another one, which was, how proficient am I in math? I'll be completely honest with you. I struggled with math. I struggled with it for a very, very long time. And it took getting into college and having to be required to go through calculus to really find the right kind of tutoring and teaching that worked for me. So I'm proficient all the way through calculus, which I think many folks in STEM are, and it's great. It's really good to have that knowledge and that foundation in math. Do I think that many folks who are involved in science, computer science careers have to be like math whizzes? Well, yeah. So in some cases, yes. In some cases, no. You definitely need to be a problem solver. I would say more than anything else, to be in STEM, you really got to be a problem solver. So, John, you mentioned that you cannot read it, so I apologize that if my slides were not coming through very large. I believe that they post these presentations afterwards. You're more than welcome to pull down this and maybe zoom in a little bit more. So my apologies that my slides weren't readable. So. Are there any other questions that you guys have? I oftentimes get a lot of different questions from folks, but I've tried to answer all of them inside of the slide presentation. So here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to give you this. This is my name, and this is my email address here at Microsoft. Feel free to reach out to me. Contact me. If you have any questions in the future, maybe you can't answer them right now, reach out to me, ncarte@microsoft.com. Feel free to contact me if you want some recommendations, if you want someone to review your resume, if you want to pick my brain about opportunities or classes and you're trying to figure it out. I love to hear from students, so make myself available. Please feel free to reach out to me. So, and then finally, as I said at the beginning, there are kind of a little bit of a plug here at the end, but Microsoft does do a couple things really, really well. One of the things is we have a fantastic set of student engagements here at Microsoft. Our academic engagement is one of the things that we're most committed about. And there are 3 different programs of these that I want to specifically highlight that I think are most important. So the first one is Students to Business. That's the program that I run. I would love for all of you to come to Microsoft.com/en-us students to business right here. This is a site that's going to help connect you up with people who are looking for interns and the next generation of IT and science professionals, so science and technology and computer professionals. So feel free to go up there, register, totally free, doesn't cost you a dime. Get in, post your resume, and start searching for jobs today. I believe that at last count, just a few days ago, we had over 21,000 jobs posted from all over the United States. So great resource for all of you. Some of them are with Microsoft partners, some of them are not. So there's great opportunity here for you if you're looking for a job or an internship. So I recommend going there. Additionally, there is a program called DreamSpark. DreamSpark is a way for students to go and get access to Microsoft's developer and IT technologies at no cost. All you have to do is go to the site, you sign up. It's completely free. You don't have to pay a dime. You sign up on the website. You have to validate that you're a student, and there's a little validation mechanism you go through. It's very, very easy to do. Registration takes less than 2 or 3 minutes. So you go up, you plug it in, and you get access for 1 full year to a bevy of Microsoft's technologies. And this is everything from the Windows Server operating system, and it's the full-featured product. It is not slimmed down in any way. You get the Robotics Studio, SQL Server, etc., etc. The list goes on. I mean, Visual Studio is all up there, and they are the full-featured products available for you students because Microsoft has a huge commitment to helping education. And this is one way that we can directly interface with students and give away our software for the next generation of technology leaders. Included in that as well, that I think is worthy of note, is if you're somebody who's interested in getting access to those pieces of technology to develop a Windows application, a Windows 8 application, a Windows Phone application, maybe an Xbox Live indie game, there is a process through that site that allows you to sign up. It waives your registration fee in the Microsoft Marketplace and allows you to publish your applications and games to make a profit. You can download the software for free, you can register for free, it waives all your fees, and then you can develop and publish an application that people can download for a cost, and you get to make money on that. I mean, that's absolutely cool. How cool is that? You get to develop an application that you can then make money on. You get everything you need for free. So I recommend really going up and checking that out. It's super easy to register. And finally, the last one that I think is really noteworthy is the Imagine Cup. This is Microsoft's premier technology competition. It happens every single year. This year we're having the finals located in St. Petersburg, Russia. Last year it was in Sydney, Australia. The year before that it was in Warsaw. The year before that it was in New York. The year before that it was in Cairo. We do it somewhere different every year. And what happens is teams compete within their country to become the best of the best in a given category. There's like 8 or 10 different categories for which you can be nominated and kind of compete in. It can be software design, it can be next generation user experience design, it can be hardware interface design, etc. And you can compete all the way up, and if you end up making it as the top in your country, you get put into a pool where a team of Microsoft and industry, so people in the industry, judges, will come in, rate your work, and if you're selected out of those, you can be flown to this location and you compete on a worldwide stage with people from industry. Last year we had Eva Longoria was our MC. So I mean, you can meet amazing people, and there's huge cash prizes. So what a great way for you to distinguish yourself in terms of your career going forward. So I really recommend that you check out that site as well. So before I wrap up, Catherine, you asked one final question. So, oh, thank you. So she just said thanks so much, and that she's just experimenting with online classes and different things. So continue to do it. Continue to be a learner. I mean, I'm 31 years old, and I'll tell you what, I still go out and try to find new things to learn. It should be a never-ending process. And I think the people who are the lifelong learners end up having richer, fuller lives, and that's just a philosophical standpoint from a survey of one, just me. But nonetheless, I hope that what you found here has been really helpful. Again, you can reach out to me here, Neil Carter, ncarte@microsoft.com. Reach out to me if you ever need anything. I'll be happy to review your resumes. I'll be happy to have a conversation with you, connect you with people maybe in a particular job category that you're interested in. But nonetheless, so I want to thank you guys for coming today, and I really look forward to seeing what you do. This is going to be an exciting time for technology, and you guys get to lead it. So thank you, and good luck. Bye-bye.